Hello, everyone. So my name is Jessie Ray Short, and I think I'm the last person speaking tonight. And wow, this is so bright. I can't really see anyone, but my family is here tonight, which is really great. It's my mom and dad, Ray and Tara Short, my cousin Yvonne, and my auntie Pauline are all in the audience. Thank you very much for coming. But also, it's my parents, they've met me. I'm pretty weird, so I think they're ready for this. But Auntie Pauline and Yvonne, here we go. I'm Métis on my dad's side, Métis and Ukrainian, and my mom is Métis and German, Ukrainian and German. And I just recently moved to Regina a couple years ago, which has been really great because our family actually comes from Willow Bunch, which is in southern Saskatchewan, and then also Park Valley, which is where Maria Campbell is from as well. And it feels really nice to be here, I must say. So the Elder Wands, I'm going to talk pretty specifically about the piece that I have in this show because it's like a long, strange story, and I'm going to try and make it 10 minutes. Anyway, a number of years ago, this is my wonderful collaborator / cousin, Amy Malbuff, and this was several years ago. We started to do our third exhibition. We were co-curating a series. Okay. Yeah. Alyssa? Oh, I can't see. Okay. Anyway, so this was our third show. We were started to work on our third show, and we'd done 2 exhibitions of Métis artists because we both had the same problem of doing our master's degrees and just not having a lot of information about Métis artists, at all, aside from anthropological information, maybe. And so we started to think, I've heard people say, oh, well, there's just not a lot of Métis artists or whatever. And we lived in the BC interior, and I was new there and sad, and so I'd drive and see Amy all the time. And then we pulled out our family trees, and we're like, oh, we're related. And we just started to talk about this. So anyway, we did 2 shows, and the second show was a lot of work, and it was good, but we were pretty burnt out. But then this really amazing curator, director, Emily Chenger, offered us to do a third show. And she's a really great person to work with. She was so supportive, and that show really wouldn't have happened without her. Because we got to work differently, we got to work more fluidly, and specifically, she was okay with us being both curators and artists in the show, and you're not technically supposed to curate yourself into the show as an artist, but we did it. And part of that was because, we are both artists, and we wanted to respond materially as well as responding to this idea of being Métis artists, as well as with words, right, and concepts and all this. So anyway, when we were starting this out, I was going on and on about, I wonder, I was starting to get more interested in what had happened at Batoche in 1885 and exploring my family connections to that fight. And I was starting to see these links with Toronto, soldiers coming from Toronto out to Batoche and, fighting Métis people. And so while we were there, there was an artist who, I think he's a scholar more, Jesse Thistle, also from Park Valley, who told us that apparently Cuthbert Grant had been tried in this courthouse that was in downtown Toronto, that was apparently in this Taroni's restaurant. And we've since found out since then that it's actually like a block away from there. But this was actually an old courthouse, you know. So we went there at the time. I mean, who knows? Maybe he was held there for a little while. I don't know, because it actually is old prison cells in the basement, and they're wine cellars now. So they used to keep people from escaping, and now they keep the wine from escaping, I guess. Anyway, so we sort of started looking into that, and is the green button? Okay, part of the reason that I was thinking about that is because when I had been living in Toronto for a couple years, I happened across this statue at Queen's Park, and you know, I just like cut through the field one day, and it's actually a statue dedicated to all the Canadian soldiers who fought and died in the Northwest at Batoche, at Cut Knife, at Fish Creek, and at Duck Lake. So that was really shocking to me. I was like, what? Like, it's so strange to be, you know, I'm a Canadian citizen technically, but I also have Canadian citizens. I'm not going to tell this story in 5 minutes. I have, you know, but this monument to Canadian citizens who fought against some of my family in the past, right? Anyway, it kind of messed with my head, and I really wanted Amy to see this. And we were trying to figure out what kind of show we wanted to do. So I was saying, like, you know, should we look at Toronto as a colonial center for the prairies? Like, is this something, you know, we should explore? I mean, so that one was erected in, what does it say? I can't remember. It's like 1890 maybe, I think, or something like that. It was first put up. So that was a long time ago. But then we found this. There's also John A. Macdonald statues there, quite a few. And then we also found this, which is a newer monument. And again, you can see here, is that a laser? Oh, I don't, yeah, Northwest Rebellion. So this was like a military timeline of Canada, basically, as a nation. And, you know, some of the early things were, again, battles against Métis people, against Indigenous people. But this is a newer monument. I think it was erected in 2006. So, you know, that was a bit of a head trip. We were feeling kind of like this is a heavy story to take on. And in the meantime, I'm like I'm a weird person, I guess. I really like sort of follow in, you know, my family's interest in sort of, I think in both sides of my family, people are very self-taught. I have mechanics. My uncle builds computers, like he just taught himself how. And also he builds his own Tesla coil in his garage in Bourneville, Alberta. And, you know, so I was talking about, well, maybe we should be like, if we don't do this, which feels heavy, like, what if we do something kind of fun about sort of our interactions as Métis artists with science and technology and belief, and sort of where those things intersect. And I was telling Amy about my uncle's Tesla coil, which was in the garage. And, you know, so we sort of went from there. And then I started to ask my uncle, I was like, well, maybe it'd be cool to do kind of a family lineage because, you know, we don't have any beadwork or anything that I'm aware of like that that's been passed down through our family. But, you know, I do have some stories about, like, the resistance and whatnot. And honestly, I was like, maybe electricity is, like, my lineage, you know? So I started talking to my Uncle David and was curious about maybe doing a project with him where we build a Tesla coil in a in the gallery. Oh, whoops, I turned it off. So this is a Tesla coil in action. So it's like those static balls that you'd see at the science center, you know, make your hair stand up as a kid. And the more we looked into it, like, and I thought about it, I realized we needed a lot more time and money to make it so it didn't kill someone. And I want to do it, but like, I just realized that this was probably not feasible at this point. So a few days after I get back from this trip to Toronto with Amy and Emily Chenger to do research about this exhibition, I started, thinking about uh, what I would do, right? And I was sort of, also while we were at the Queen's Park, I was talking about to Amy, I was like, I bet you John A. Macdonald's ancestors, like, wouldn't it be so interesting to track them, and like, what if they're captains of industry now? Like, I don't know where they are, I'm curious, right? Be careful what you ask for. So when I got home, I went with my partner, Tom, and we were seeing a dominatrix. And she was an interesting person, and I was having a lot of chronic health issues and a lot of pain. And she worked a lot with, she was really interested in working with people with like disability and trying to like navigate sexuality, sensuality when like it's hard. And, so this is actually a little scene from a zine that is going to accompany the Elder Wands as well. So that Faust, my friend Faust Harder, is illustrating. It'll be a risograph. So anyway, I spent a lot of time in pain. I basically worked and I was in pain. And, short, like maybe 5 days after I got back from that trip, we went to see her. And that night she was telling us about electrosex, which I'd never really heard of before. But she pulled out these little items, and they were called violet wands, which you see hanging in the gallery. And she was showing them to me, and she was explaining they were originally made, by gas fitters to test for gas leaks, and then they became kind of like this like snake oil health issue. So you could heal anything like psoriasis, oldness, whatever. Just rub it all over your body. And I see them on Instagram now still, so be aware of this. And then the kink community, like in the 1970s, was like, "Ooh, that hurts," and so they became a kink part of like the kink community. Anyway, she was showing me these things, and she said they're actually powered by like mini Tesla coils, and I was like, "Oh, that's weird." And and so we were touching it, and it kind of hurt, and it was like just this interesting sensation as well. And, it was kind of funny, right? It wasn't lost on me that I was just like, I'm going to make a Tesla coil. And then this person shows me this thing. So then a little while later, we're like talking about kinks. And I said, one of the kinks I don't get, so obviously this is not my kink, is attraction to statues. And I guess this is a thing people have, no judgment. And because I'd been in Toronto looking at all these colonial statues, my partner Tom kind of set up, and he was like, "Oh, like John A. Macdonald," and I, because I was talking about all these John A. statues everywhere, and the dominatrix just kind of like perked up and was like, "It's funny you should mention him, because I'm actually a direct descendant of his." And I was very shocked, and I didn't really know what to say, except, like, I kind of asked for this, right? So anyway, after I realized we couldn't do this Tesla coil thing, but here's this person who showed me this, like, body-safe, essentially, device that was sort of ready to be touched, ready to be interacted with. And so I was trying to think about how to incorporate that without just having like a single wand. So when I was 16, I was quite depressed, and I had amazing dreams. Though I've always had really amazing dreams, and it's been something in my household. We get up in the morning and we talk about our dreams. And I had this dream that was like super real, and I woke up in a forest. And I could see like a fire in the distance, and so I walked to it. And when I got to the fire, there was all these elders sitting around it, and there were 13 of them. And I knew that they were all speaking different languages. I knew they were all from different nations, but they were talking to each other. And the people closest to me, it was two women kind of split apart, and I sat down on the bench like a log. And as soon as I sat down on the log, I could understand them all. And I was just kind of like, whoa, like it felt important. And I was like, how did I get here? You know, and I was really excited. And I remember the woman to my right turning to me, and she just said, "What do you want to know?" And I was like, I don't know. What do you mean? And she said, "Well, you came here. What do you want to know?" And so I said, I was like, I better make this good. And, you know, and I've always been kind of interested in spirits and the other side. So I was like, what is the secret of the universe? And she just kind of like laughed, like, oh, that question. And then she told me. And it was very simple. It was like 24 words, and each word that she said was like peeling away this layer of, I don't know what, but it like sorrow, I guess, that I was carrying around with me. And when she was done speaking, like I felt like it was maybe what it might be to be enlightened. I just felt so totally connected to everything around me, and I felt okay, which wasn't common for me as a teenager. And she just kind of was like, and, you know, started talking to her friend again. And then I was sitting there like, oh my God, this is amazing. And then I just started to get sucked away. And then I woke up, and I remembered for the first minute that I was awake what she said, and then each word slowly just went one at a time. But I remember the feeling. And when I was looking into this Tesla coil thing, you know, it was interesting because Nikola Tesla's actually very philosophical, right? He actually designed things, but he also thinks a lot. And, you know, one of the things that struck me when I was reading some of his writing was he had this quote about, if you want to know the secret of the universe, which is exactly what I want to know. But, you know, again, this is the mystery of it, I guess. He said, look to, like, I think you need to look at 369. Those numbers are incredibly important, apparently, for Tesla. And so it was just all these funny coincidences, right? And yeah, so that's where I decided to have this configuration. These are the elders. And I guess, you know, I'm very interested in unseen forces, whether they be unrecognized people, Métis, Indigenous people, or, you know, even things like electricity. Like, we don't really see it. We see the effects of it, but we don't see the thing itself. But that doesn't mean it doesn't affect us still. And I really loved the idea of having these elder wands there turned on, right? You can hear them. They're buzzing. They're ready. And they've always got their stories, but they don't really do too much until you interact with them. And then they reach out, they jump out to meet you, right? Because we conduct electricity, so we kind of activate them when we engage with them, when we visit with them. Yeah, so that's how I came up with this sort of very convoluted piece. And I'm really happy that they're here. They've only been in Ontario so far, so I feel like kind of they're home, because this is where I live. So I'm really happy for them to be here. Thanks.